Talk about savage. Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts just shredded a Trump-supporting news anchor on CNBC. Warren pummeled and laughed at anchor Sarah Eisen, who compared Warren's public pressure on the Federal Reserve to Donald Trump's influence peddling on the Fed.
You yourself have been very outspoken on this show and otherwise on what the Fed should be doing. You also advocated for Lael Brainerd and Janet Yellen, who you were aligned with on policy views. I mean, this isn't that different, you know, with the president expressing what he wants in terms of policy and who he wants.
I'm sorry. Is that real? It is not different to just say, here's my opinion, and here's how I read the numbers, and here's who I think has a good track record. You think that's the same as being the president of the United States and employing the Department of Justice to bring criminal charges against someone? Sending someone a notice that they have been fired? Donald Trump is not expressing an opinion. Donald Trump is trying to control the Fed. You know it, and I know it. And what he's also trying to do is to control the Fed by terrifying all of them.
Then why didn't you ask Kevin Warsh about that? Why didn't you ask Kevin Warsh about the criminal investigation against Chair Powell?
We did. And do you know what he said? I asked him in my office. He said, I'm not going to comment on that because it's an ongoing investigation.
Kevin Warsh is Donald Trump's nominee to be the next head of the Federal Reserve. Before his public testimony, where Warsh refused to separate himself from Donald Trump or criticize Trump on anything, Warsh met privately with members of the Senate committee. They asked Warsh about Donald Trump demanding Justice Department investigations of current Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
Now, I could have spent 45 seconds having him say the same thing again, but he told every one of us the same thing. You'll get no comment from me on that, because that's what Kevin Warsh is doing. Exactly what you'd expect a sock puppet to do. Uncomfortable questions, he just says, I'm not going to answer them. I will not answer them, and I have nothing that I can disagree, not a single fact that I can disagree with Donald Trump on.
And that's why Elizabeth Warren is calling Kevin Warsh a Trump sock puppet. In explaining this to CNBC host Sarah Eisen, Warren sounded like a grade school teacher trying to simplify things about Warsh for a dim-witted student.
You think he might just the tiniest place where Donald Trump might be wrong.
But for Fed chairs to disagree with politicians and presidents, that threatens their very independence. If he were to do that, Jay Powell wouldn't do that. Janet Yellen wouldn't do that.
If we have a Fed chair who is listening to a president of the United States who said, oh, tariffs don't cost anything. Oh, blockade in the Strait of Hormuz does not raise prices. Oh, prices are not going up. We have a president who thinks he can bend reality. We need a Fed chair who can actually assert reality. That was the test I was looking for. Kevin Warsh can't do it.
And Sarah Eisen can't seem to understand the concept of being separate from Donald Trump. So Warren tried to explain it again and noted that the bar set for Trump's nominee was low.
He really had one main job to do, and that was demonstrate some independence, because we all understand why we need an independent Fed. We need people who are going to make decisions based on the numbers as best they can, that they'll look at the employment numbers and they'll look at the inflation numbers and they'll look at what's happening with tariffs, and they'll do their best job. And we may disagree with them. I often disagree with how they analyze it, but they are doing their best based on the numbers, on their analysis of the economy. What Donald Trump wants is a Fed that is under his control. He wants a sock puppet, and he's been very clear about that.
And that clarity comes from the constant Trump whining and insults of the current Fed chair.
He should be lowering rates immediately, but he won't do that because he's a stubborn, incompetent person, and that's a bad thing. You know, when you're stubborn and incompetent, I think it's the worst combination. And he's also not a smart person.
He's threatened to fire the current Federal Reserve chair. He's brought bogus criminal charges against him. He's tried to fire another Fed governor, and he's tried to control the Fed. And you have to ask yourself, why is he doing this and who's going to push back? And he's doing it, look, because he's in real trouble on the economy. He promised on day one that he would lower prices. And where are we now? Prices are up for groceries, prices are up for housing, prices are up for healthcare, prices are up for gasoline, prices are up for utilities because of Donald Trump's policies. So his hope is that he can control the Fed and somehow create more special Donald Trump chaos and skate on past Election Day in November. Kevin Warsh's job yesterday was just to show just a little tiny bit of independence, and he just couldn't do that.
Now, to be fair, Sarah Eisen's job as a cable news host is to push back on all guests and not take anybody's word for anything. But Eisen's approach, particularly in defending Donald Trump, is often so shallow and absurd that Eisen becomes ridiculous. On this day, a U.S. senator literally laughed in Eisen's face and shamed the CNBC host. Good for Senator Elizabeth Warren. She keeps proving that blasting Donald Trump is not enough. Even the Trump sycophants deserve to have their unhinged arguments thrown back in their face. By the way, FBI Director Kash Patel, who stands accused by Atlantic Magazine of being a drunk and paranoid about losing his job, insists he did not think Donald Trump this month had fired him.
I was never locked out of my systems. Anybody who says
your lawsuit says the opposite. Your lawsuit
anyone that says the opposite is lying. Thank you.
Patel lawsuit, quote, Director Patel had a routine technical problem logging into a government system, which was quickly fixed. In other words, based on Patel's own news conference, he and his lawyers are lying.
Never been intoxicated on the job, and that is why we filed a $250 million defamation lawsuit. And any one of you that wants to participate, bring it on. I'll see you in court.
Explain the computer login issue. Just explain the computer login issue. You were not able to log into your lawsuit contends that you were not able to log into the system.
Patel struggled to log into an internal computer system. He quickly became convinced that he had been locked out, and he panicked, frantically calling aides and allies to announce that he had been fired by the White House, according to 9 people familiar with his outreach. 9 people.
What did you think after you were unable to log into the system?
Let's have a survey. How many of you people believe that's true? Hang on.
Did you communicate
You
with
asked the question. Let me answer
Did
it.
you communicate with anyone that you thought you were fired after you were unable to log into
The problem with you and your report, don't cut me off. You asked the question.
Straightforward question.
The problem with you and your baseless reporting is that is an absolute lie.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular from God's Child, who wrote, "The whole GOP cult is corrupt. You'll never get a straight answer. Just BS and lies. Jail." I hear you. I look forward to reading your comments about a MAGA-loving business news anchor getting torched on her own show by Senator Elizabeth Warren. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.